Yes. Well, welcome back, everybody, to Tuesday Bro Tuesday. Welcome to or welcome back to Tuesday Bro Tuesday. You know, this used to be a live call-in show. How do you even know what show you're watching? There it is. There's the logo. It used to be a live call-in show. I don't know why I continuously mention that. It's always in the back of my brain. I want this to be a live call-in show. Maybe every once in a while we'll test those waters again. But what we do nowadays is we sort of unpack some news that's been going on as it relates to the world of vaping, tobacco control, tobacco harm reduction, and the such as. I'm a freedom guy, first and foremost. I like to say that right out of the gate. I'm a registered libertarian, so that's the lens that a lot of this news is going to get viewed through, as they say. But welcome. Thank you guys for being here. Cherokee Vapor, I see you there in the chat. Addy Tooney's here. Poon Sauce is here. Good Lord. Well, someone else is here. We have a very special guest today. Without any further ado, I'm just going to bring her on board. It's Danielle Jones.
What up?
The great and powerful
Back
Danielle
again.
Jones. Back again. How's it feel?
You know, I feel like your viewers are probably getting bored of me.
No, they're not. In fact, I saw someone in the chat. I set up the stream like early in the morning, like 9-10 in the morning, and someone had left a comment in the chat that said something like, "It's the advocacy dynamic duo, GrimmGreen, Danielle Jones." I was like, I'll take that. That's cool.
I'll take it.
I'll be part of an advocacy dynamic duo. So before I guess we really get into the meat of why we're here today, which that is youth vaping is down. I mean, that's a thing. Youth vaping is down.
It is a thing.
Verifiably down. There's a few things I wanted to mention right off the top. I'm going to mention this in every stream moving forward. The Veritas cohort study, still going on. I will leave a link in the description. If you fit this criteria, if you're in these certain areas, let me double check where these certain areas are. Nashua, New Hampshire, Boston, Massachusetts, the Toronto area in Canada, Northwest Georgia and Tennessee, as well as Washington, D.C. If you are a current vapor and you have smoked less than 1,000 cigarettes total in your life, then you can be a part of this study. It's going to be a really good thing if they can get enough people to do it. It's very non-intrusive. It's like one check-in thing, like a year, and then every 3 months that you do like a questionnaire type of thing. I would highly suggest, I mean, if you fit this criteria, please, you could be a part of history. You could be a part of a huge study. So like I said, I'll throw a link to that in the description. And there is, here, I'll just put this over my face. There is still an active CASAA call to action for the vape mail. It's still going on. Keep vape mail. This is to oppose S1253. And since we have someone from CASAA here, anything else you want to throw on top?
I would say just keep those messages going. We don't really, as far as from the last update, they're just kind of hanging on to it. We're not real sure what's going on, but keep the messages, keep the pressure on. Keep
the pressure on. And you can do it like multiple times.
Oh, sure. Why not?
Sure.
Yeah.
That's not gonna. Just
whatever.
Keep doing it.
Fine.
Yeah.
It's
Keep
fine.
sending messages. Keep sending messages.
Call them too. Just write it around. Like send an email, call them, write a letter, and then start over. Send an email.
Yeah. Just go through the whole cycle. And protect vape mail. Now this is S1253 is a big bipartisanly supported sort of bill from what I understand. It was a Republican from Texas that started it, and it instantly got massive bipartisan support. We just nobody knows when it's going to get voted on. That's like the big question looming over everybody's head.
Correct.
No idea. So that's a thing. That's still an active call to action. So yeah, with those two, save vape mail, green-eyed lady. Do it. It takes very little effort to do the call to action. Very little effort. So like I said, I'll have a link in the description to both the Veritas cohort study and the CASAA Save the Vape Mail, still active, call to action. But now, we're going to talk about the National Youth Tobacco Survey You know, before I became a vapor and like being sort of an advocate, this is something I never even thought about before, was never concerned with, never heard the term National Youth Tobacco Survey. You?
No, I'd never heard of it.
Never. And is it something you ever thought that you'd be like digging into and like disseminating information from?
No, absolutely not. It's like fall time is NYTS time and we're like on the lookout. Like, what is that even? It's survey season.
It's survey season. So the New York, the National Youth, when I see NY together,
I know.
It just becomes New York in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that is. It's just a weird thing. So is the National, I almost did it again. Is the National Youth Tobacco Survey, the National Youth Tobacco Survey is different from like the YRBS. The YRBS.
Yeah, so they're two different, they're both done by the CDC.
Okay.
But I believe it's like different segments because the CDC has a lot of departments, right? So
right.
The YRBS, which stands for the Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance, which is creepy. Surveillance. Yep. That one is a more inclusive survey that also covers other topics that could affect, the health of youth. For example, drug use or behaviors like whether you ride in a car with a seatbelt or sexual activity or lots of other things.
Right,
so
where you text, or maybe while you text while you're driving, that stuff's included.
It's a lot of different behaviors. It also includes tobacco and vaping in it, but there's a larger focus there. It's, anything that is risky behavior that youth do, essentially.
Sure.
And then the NYTS, which is the National Youth Tobacco Survey, focuses specifically on tobacco. That survey is done yearly. The YRBS is done every 2 years. So that's the other thing to note. So we just got the YRBS for 2019.
I didn't know that.
So all of that data is from last year. Before that, it was the 2017. They only do it every 2 years. I like that survey better than the NYTS. So it's a bummer to me that it's only, every other year. But NYTS is every year. Both surveys are conducted in schools. They, pick a sampling of schools across the country. I think it usually ends up being something like 20,000 students that they say that's their sample size, essentially somewhere in there.
This
and
is
then
for
they
the
extrapolate
youth risk.
That.
The youth risk. What is it?
Both of them. I think NYTS is about 20, somewhere in the teens or 20,000. It depends on the year. But it's not usually more than 20,000 is from what I remember. And that's why I always liked the UK surveys better because they sampled like 60,000.
Yeah, much broader.
So the bigger your sample size, the bigger your sample size is always better. Just always. Across the board, a bigger sample size is always better. Their sample size, isn't as big as others, but that's what they do. That's what we have. That's what we're going with. So.
Does the UK do the same like age demographics as far as, the National Youth Tobacco Survey does what, like 5th grade or 6th grade through 12th grade?
Yeah, they do. Well, they do National Youth Tobacco. I think they definitely do middle school and high school. I don't know if they actually break it down by grade. I don't remember that, at least not in the, because there's raw data and then there's data that they publish, right? So in the published data, I don't typically recall seeing a breakdown by grade. The YRBS does to a certain extent with some things. It just, all studies are different, but it's primarily middle school versus high school is how they typically do it. With the UK though, I'm trying to remember here. Let's see, I pull up my UK.
Yeah, sure. I didn't expect you to have that off the top of your head. And I'm not trying to stump you.
I've got it in my folder. Remember, we talked about our folders. I've got it in my folder.
Yeah, in my folder. Meanwhile, Stan in with the super chat. Fucking John Cornyn. Yeah. And he's pushing hard for re-election this year in Texas. Tell him you are not supporting him. Now, yeah, he's the author of S1253, the vape mail ban.
Right.
Look.
Cornyn.
Yeah, vote with your votes. Vote with your dollars and vote with your votes. Baby Doe, that's very gracious of you. Let's go, boys. Beginning of Stream Gang. Yeah, beginning of Stream Gang. You get all the dangle clacks up front.
Right.
All the dangle clacks up front.
Yeah, so the UK breaks it down differently. From what I see, they have 11 to 16-year-olds. So that sounds to me like middle school.
Yeah.
It depends on, like, you've got UK, you've got Great Britain, you've got Wales, and then Scotland does 13 years or older, 15 years and older. So everybody's slightly different, but it's the same middle school, high school, ages that they're looking at.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And shockingly, the UK study never really comes to the same conclusions that the National Youth Tobacco Survey comes to.
That's correct. I did a graph once upon a time that I didn't really do a whole lot with.
Danielle graph. Give me a graph.
But essentially, like, they unlike typically the NYTS up until fairly recently didn't ever bother to list frequency. They only, and we talk about this a lot, right? Because when they say current vaping, being a current vapor in the eyes of this survey, right? Yeah. Current use means that you have vaped at least one time in the last 30 days prior to taking this survey. So even if you borrowed and took a puff off your friends one time, you are considered a current user for this survey.
That's so ridiculously misleading, I think.
I agree with you, especially since youth experimentation rates are astronomical, as we all know.
Yeah.
And that's why I like the YRBS survey better, is because they have always broke it down by frequency. So they do also do current, but then they do frequent, they do daily, they've got all of those things in there. The UK does the same thing. They look at ever or in current, frequent, ever current and frequent, they break it down more so you can actually see, because I have more concern about somebody who's doing it like every day.
Yeah. Every single
20
day
out of the last 30 days, rather than somebody who might have done it once.
Yeah. It's twice. Just such a vague bucket to throw someone in, you did it once. That makes you a current user. That's crazy to me. It's purposefully misleading. I don't know. Where's my tinfoil hat? It seems a little misleading. It seems like an easy way to just say to the public, "Oh, look at all these youths that are vaping. Current users." They call them current users, even if it's just once,
right?
Because
that sounds like That sounds like daily. A current user sounds like somebody who is habitually using it, right? But that's not the case in this.
No, but they do differentiate current user and daily user, right? Like daily use is its own bucket in the National Youth Tobacco Survey.
This year it is. Historically, they have not. So if you're talking about 2018 and like prior, they didn't really ever release that information. In 2019 was the first time that I saw that they actually published frequency. They never really talked about it. It was in the raw data. If you're like Dr. Brad Radu and you can like download this giant data set, you have special software to analyze it.
Disseminate
it's in there. Right. But for the average, person, for the most part, we rely on the data sets that the FDA analyzes themselves, or CDC analyzes and puts out. And they never really reported frequency at all prior to 2018, to my knowledge, that I ever saw. 2019, they started doing frequent. And then this year, they actually did frequent and daily. So maybe they saw my articles. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you influence the CDC? Wow. It's just
probably not.
It seems like that would be important information that they would want to know.
I mean, and they've had it this whole time. They just don't share that. That's not like what they put in their press releases, right? They just put, they've typically just put current vaping in their press releases.
Yeah. Current vaping. Well, we got Trey Watt in with the super chat here. I'm a huge Danielle Jones fan. Yeah, he is. And you too, Nick. Loving this episode. Thank you for being here, Trey. I appreciate you. We got 94 Vape. Just said, hey, Nick and Danielle. Hey, what's up, 94? How you doing, bro? Chilling. One thing I wanted to mention real quickly that Danielle reminded me of before we jump too far into this is I mentioned this in a vlog, I think like 2 weeks ago, but the GTNF, the Global Tobacco and Nicotine Forum, is happening. It's sort of an online speakers and presenters, and the whole discussion is around tobacco, nicotine, tobacco control, things like that. Alex Clark from CASAA He did clap for Alex Clark. Love Alex Clark. He was on the show once, even though it was just a dangle clack fueled nightmare, but he's been here before. We'll have to get him back on now that it's simmered down a little bit. But he did he did the keynote for it. There's going to be other people speaking. It's free to register. Yes. Danielle, do you want to speak to that? CASAA sent out an email for it.
Yeah. So we did send out a mass email. If you're a CASAA member, you will have an email. You should have it already. It was sent out yesterday with instructions on how to register. If you are not a member, you should be. But you can go to CASAA's Twitter or the daily heads up post from yesterday on our website. And that also has instructions. It's free. You just have to fill out some information, give it your email address. They'll send you a login and then you can get in. The replays. So Alex gave one of the keynotes this morning, very, very early in the morning.
Yeah.
Too early. You can watch too early for me. It was a little
Alex.
early for me.
I love you, Alex. I'm sorry. That's too early.
But they'll have replays up of these, all of these speeches and the recordings of everything for about a month. So as soon as they put the replay up, I'm watching that. And then he's on another panel tonight at, I believe, 6:45 Pacific time. So it's a little late for the East Coasters, but he's got 2 different things that he's doing today. So register, it's free. And then you can watch all of these wonderful keynotes and speeches and panels that a ton of people are on. It's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like a really big deal. I've been interested to see, there's some kind of information and stuff coming out from it. I've seen Charles Gardner had posted a few things about it, and a few other people have posted a few screen grabs and pictures, and there's been some interesting stuff coming out of it. Do they do this every year? Is this a yearly thing?
They do, and typically it's in person. It's an actual conference,
right?
But with COVID and everything, it's all virtual. And it's the way that they're doing it this year is pretty interesting because it is global, right? So they've actually it's almost streaming 24/7, depending on the time zone, essentially. So they've got events going all day, all night, and they structure it based on where the speakers live. So there's a bunch of America's, events that are in normal hours that we're awake. And then you've got other, Asian or, other areas of the world.
Yeah,
so there's a lot of content, a lot of speakers, a lot of panels.
Yeah.
Some pretty cool stuff.
And there's going to be a lot of information coming out of this. I'm not sure where the replays are going to be. I'm sure those will be easy enough to track down. I'll try to get some links.
There's a toolbar at the top. It says replays. Once you get your login and you log into it after you register, it's real easy.
Okay, awesome. Well, cool. So I'll have some links down in the description for that. But Alex Clark is speaking, and I think that's huge. I think that's great.
Yep.
And I love Alex. And I know without even watching it, I know he did a good job.
For sure.
Right. 100%. 100%. So I just wanted to mention that real quick with some super chats. Vaping with the Super Cloud says, "G'day, Nick. G'day, Danielle. Watching from Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. Chilling with a coffee and a vape. Boosh, yo, yo. That's right, Vaping with the Super Clouds. Appreciate you being here, bro. Next week on this Tuesday, Bro Tuesday, we're going to be having Colin Mendelson on, bro. We're going to be talking all about Australia, everything that's going on over there with Greg Hunt and the nicotine ban and how nicotine poisonings are up, even though they're not up. He's just saying they're up. Should be real interesting. Should be a real interesting time. I got another one here from Logan Exhales. Danielle is just the absolute best. Yeah, duh. Thanks for being amazing, Danielle. Nick's cool too, I guess. Look, I know. That's fine. I'll play second fiddle to Danielle Jones any day of the week. Got one from Mike Williams. There we go. With the dynamic duo on the scene, we shall prevail. Yes. It's just you and me, Danielle. We're gonna take this whole system down. Yeah, taking on the world. We're just trying to do the best we can, Mike Williams, but I appreciate you being here. In other news, youth vaping is down. If the CDC is to be believed, youth vaping is down. And how substantially down is it? I hear conflicting things, you see.
So it's a little it requires math, honestly, to understand.
Yeah.
It's because they do this very tricky thing where they report percentages of percentages.
Yes.
So to give you an example, I'll tell you what I mean. Okay, so they're reporting that this 2020 current vaping, right? So if we remember our definition, that is, I'm going to talk about high schoolers right now. So high schoolers who have vaped even once in the 30 days prior to taking this survey, which, by the way, the survey was conducted between January and March of this year. So it was right before the shutdowns.
Pre-shutdown, pre-quarantine.
Pre-shutdowns.
That's, I think, is a critical piece of the puzzle that people aren't taking into consideration when I say that youth vaping's down. I hear replies on Facebook and Twitter where they say, well, of course, because quarantine and COVID. And I'm saying, no, this is before that. This is before that.
So they're reporting that high school current vaping is at 19.6%, which is definitely lower than the previous year, 2019, where it was at 27.5%.
So that's pretty substantially down.
Yeah, we've got 27.5 down to basically 19.5, essentially, if you want to round a little bit. So that's a pretty steep, decline. But then where it gets tricky is what they'll say. And I feel that I know why they do this, but they report percentages of percentages.
Yes.
So, for example, of the 19.6% of current vapor users, they'll say that 38.9% of them frequently vape. Well, 38.9 sounds high, right? That sounds like kind of a high number, but that's because it's 38.9% of the 19.6%. So if you want to do actual percentages, which is what I spend part of my days doing, right? Your frequent use, if you're talking about the entirety of high schoolers, those who vape frequently, which is 20 or more days out of the previous 30, is at 7.6%. That's what now they're going to call it 38.9 because it's a percent of a percent, but the actual percent of high schoolers is 7.6.
They do that just to have the higher percentage, right? I mean, that's why they do
That's what I believe. That is my opinion, that is why they do
so
that.
They can have
7.6 doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound worrisome, right?
No,
and they do the same thing with daily, right? So what they reported for daily was that, of current users, that's the key that you have to look out for. Of current users, 22.5% vape daily.
Yes.
Okay. Well, if we extrapolate that math, what that means is that 4.4% of all high schoolers report vaping on a daily basis. 4.4.
4.4%. And did they give, so this is just high schoolers.
That's high schoolers. I have middle school if you want that too. I have the same data for middle school as well.
Yeah, and I noticed that, Time reported on this. A lot of people reported on this. New York Times reported on this. It's behind a paywall, so I didn't read it.
Yeah.
But Time reported on it, and they reported in a completely different way, and they just use like numbers. They just say 2 million fewer.
Yeah.
As opposed to
kind of the percentages, right?
Yeah, as opposed to like percentages.
And I'm the nerd that like back engineers their math to figure out the total number of. I'm not kidding you. This is what I do. I have a spreadsheet and I'm like, okay, these are the data points I have. Now I need to do algebra to figure out the missing ones, and that's literally what I do. So I backtrack, so they're saying that for this year's high schoolers, they had like 15.4 million, and that this year's middle schoolers, they had 11.7 million. That's total, like what they're basing that on. And then they'll do, so you'll say, okay, there's 3 million high schoolers current vaping, like 3 million, right? But that's out of a total of 15.4 million. So yeah, I have all those breakdowns too, because I want to be able to figure out other math, right?
Yeah.
You need to know these totals to figure out the math. So I'm algebraing it up over here.
Yeah. See, look, algebra. I never took algebra. Thankfully, Danielle Jones took algebra.
If you want to understand some of this stuff, you need to solve for X a few times. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a little bit of solving for X going on here.
A little bit of solving for X. And it seems like, okay, so they give middle school They gave middle school vaping numbers. And this is what they led with. Like, this is all the information we have so far, correct, from the National Youth Tobacco Survey. We don't know any smoking numbers.
Nothing.
Or anything.
Nothing
they just
on
did
anything
vaping.
except vaping, which they've never done before. I am a little perplexed. I have some theories about what that means.
Sure. Let's dive into them.
The really frustrating thing about the National Youth Tobacco Survey is that they never, since I've been tracking, they never report it in the same way twice. Like, they never use the same like numbers twice. They always release different things at different times. So this year they only put the vaping data out, nothing else. No smoking, no cigars, no hookah, no pipe tobacco, nothing. In previous years, they've always released combustible data with vaping data.
Right.
Why are you doing that? Right. So last year they released frequent use, but the year before they only did current. And now this year they're doing current, frequent, and daily. Like, it's never the same twice. It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
So if you're like trying to draw parallels between like multiple years, for example, like someone who likes to make graphs, it's infuriating because from what they release, right? Because I'm not Dr. Radu and I can't like crunch this raw data. I don't have that software or that training. I'm working with like data sets that don't match up. And part of me feels like they do that on purpose so that laymen's like me can't be like, wait a minute, you know what I mean? Like,
I see something wrong with this math and this weird presentation of data. And so in years past, correct me if I'm wrong, haven't they released just all of the data at once, like predating vaping? So even go back to like 2012 or something like that, 2013. Someone told me that they just released it all at once, and then after vaping came around, they started sort of doing this staggered release of what they feel is important.
That I don't know the answer to, because I wasn't looking at the NYTS back then. From when I've been paying attention to it, they've always done 3 releases essentially. So the first release is around now. It's typically like early fall. Mm-hmm. And that is the preliminary. So if you recall the year that vaping was declared a youth epidemic, that was that first data set that Gottlieb put out, right? Like, oh no, it's at youth epidemic levels. And we only got a little bit of data. So they always do that early fall, at least the past few years that I've been paying attention.
Sure.
Then they'll do a second release in like October. That is still their cherry-picked data, but a more inclusive. They'll have more, like the max, I would say, that they put out for the layman. So it's a little sneak peek, and then more of the full set, which has, all the breakdowns of everything. And then in the spring of the following year, they will release the full data, the raw data, which people like Dr. Radu can then download, put into their magic software, and pull any information you want. So it's always been 3 releases that I'm aware of. It's like your sneak peek hype moment. A couple months later, okay, here's all of it. And then a lot of months later, here's everything for all the researchers. And I've heard theories that potentially the reason why there's such a delay for that final raw data dump could be because like the researchers who conduct this work for the CDC, they may have sort of an agreement where like they get to be the only ones with the data for a certain period of time so that they can publish the papers that they want to publish. It's sort of like payment in a way that could be something, which isn't necessarily like, malicious or anything like that. It's just that they did the hard work, so they should be the only ones with access to the data so they can publish papers and get in journals and la, la, la. So that could be an explanation for why it takes so long for the raw dump to come out. But the first 2, I'm not real clear on why. Like, if they're doing this sneak peek analysis, I have to imagine they've already analyzed all of it. Like, come on. Why are you making us wait?
Well, and I feel like the really crummy part of that is they start shaping policy based on right. They start shaping policy based on just this preliminary data.
Mm-hmm.
That's unbelievable to me.
And it's honestly, I mean, if you talk to people like Michelle Minton or other people, like, that's ridiculous. Like, you don't do that.
No.
You don't base stuff off of preliminary data. You look at the entire set. You know what I mean? Like, it's silly. It's like that Stanford study, right? Like, let's try to, good old Raja trying to put forth new policy on the dumbest study ever. Yeah. Like,
heavy air quotes there on that.
Heavy air quotes.
Study. It's infuriating. We got Baby Doe here with the super chat. I'm 19, but I started vaping when I was 14. Uh-oh. There were no restrictions in my province. Would it be controversial to ask your stance on my legal ability to vape at that time? I started smoking at 8 years old.
Whoa.
8 years old. That's a young age to start smoking.
That is very young.
Definitely. Look, I don't. This is a real gray area for me. If you're a smoker and you pick up vaping to stop smoking, then that is just a win. And it's just a win. Now, there are laws in place. Now, in the United States, we have tobacco 21 before, it was 18 years old. And there were, I talked to people who were 15, 16 years old who were smokers who started vaping, and it was illegal for them to do either of them. But in my opinion, if you're doing something illegal, you might as well choose the less harmful illegal option.
Right.
That's what makes the most sense to me. I don't think we should punish someone for wanting to quit smoking because either way, it's illegal.
It's true. And
right.
Realistically, why are you trying to age gate harm reduction?
Yeah. Why are you trying to age gate harm reduction?
No, we're not trying to encourage anybody to do any of them. But if you're already doing the worst one.
Yeah. If you're already doing the worst one and you're already addicted to tobacco, cigarettes, combustion, then shit. Choose the less harmful option. Choose the less harmful option, Baby Doe. Appreciate that, Baby Doe. Got Light Bear here. Very gracious of you. This awesomeness can only exist when the Empire and the Rebellion have a common enemy. Always great info when Danielle's on. Thank you for having her. Yeah, absolutely. This awesomeness can only exist when the Empire and the Rebellion have a common enemy. Who's their common enemy?
Is one of them, like, am I the Empire and you're the Rebellion and we're both fighting tobacco control?
That could be. I don't know. Maybe Big Tobacco is the Empire. Yeah, you definitely could. Maybe Big Tobacco is the Empire, we're the Rebellion, and our common enemy is tobacco control.
Oh, that would make sense.
That could be a thing. That could be a thing, Light Bear. I appreciate that. Wired Talk with Big G. Appreciate that. Is that Boba Fett on his underwear behind Danielle? Yes, that's Boba Fett in his underwear behind Danielle. Methinks she has a bit of a boba fetish.
Those are Vinyl and Vapor drawings.
Yeah, that's our dear friend Eric, Vinyl and Vapor. I have his Chewbacca in the denim jacket. That's one of my favorite ones that he's done. But he's done like the little kid stormtrooper.
Right there, you just can't see it.
Just barely off camera, but yeah, he did some Star Wars drawings. And that's a little Boba Fett with just in his undies hanging out.
It's like they're great. I think he did his kid, right? Like that was his son who he kind of like drew, and then with so it's not actually, it's his son.
Yeah, come on, get your head out of the gutter, Wired with Talk Big G.
I wouldn't say I have a Boba Fett fetish. I would definitely say I have a BB-8 fetish. That is a true story.
Argument could be made. Yeah, absolutely. Pippa's Live, that's very gracious of you. Australia Up in Smoke is a documentary about our situation coming soon on my Pippa's Live channel featuring Bogan, Bates, Dr. Colin, Dr. Joe, and Vapors. You rock, Grimm. Yeah, I just saw, did you see the trailer for that, Danielle Jones?
Didn't.
It's been floating around Twitter. But yeah, there's a documentary coming up about the vape fight that's happening in Australia. The trailer looks pretty compelling. I'll keep an eye out for that, Pippa.
I want to watch it.
Yeah, it looks to be pretty cool. One more super chat here from Censor Yetkin. Hi, Grimm from Scotland. Love you, bruh. Not as much as I love you, Censor Yetkin. Sensor Yetkin is the most Star Wars name that I've ever heard. Commander Sensor Yetkin. Appreciate that from Scotland. Sensor Yetkin. Oh, good Lord. Yeah, so middle school kids. Did we talk about the middle school kids yet?
No, we didn't. So the middle school, their current vaping rate, okay, middle school has always been abysmally low. Like this is just a true story.
Really very low.
Very low. And a lot of times CDC doesn't even address it because it's so low, it's boring.
Right. I mean, even last year wasn't regular, like daily use, like not even 1%. It was like 0.6% or something in middle schools. Like smokers that transitioned to vaping was terribly low. What I don't even think it was a percent.
Their percentage of frequent vaping, so that's 20 plus days for middle school, was 1.9%.
Okay, 1.9%. 1.9%. Abysmally low.
Right.
Well, what are they saying in 2020? What happened in 2020 here?
So their current vaping in 2019 for middle school was 10.5. This year it's 4.7.
Oh, and that's less current use.
That's current. So if you break it down to frequent, you are at less than 1%, 0.94. And then if you want to go to daily, so middle schoolers using daily, you're at not even 0.5%, 0.44%.
Ha! And I'm guessing that the smoking rates are going to be even lower than they were last year.
Well, I mean, I would have to assume that's part of my theory as to why they didn't like release the smoking data.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I mean, I'm clearly biased against these survey people, right? But yeah. I've never not seen them give out preliminary tobacco, like combustible tobacco use data. And they gave no tobacco, combustible or otherwise, because they measure smokeless as well. And there's just nothing. It's only the vaping data. And I don't know if they're just, hyping off of, vaping is what people are talking about, or if it's because the combustible tobacco use is so abysmally low. Because if we look, we talked about the YRBS data a little bit, right?
Right. And there's smoking's included in that.
Right. Smoking is included. Now, this is last year, to be fair. But where did I put my graph? Hang on one second.
That's okay.
Graphs.
Love a good Danielle Jones graph.
So smoking for 2019, according to YRBS, you had, smoked cigarettes at least once. So current smoking was down to 6%, and daily smoking was 1.1% for high schoolers for last year. So I would have to imagine that NYTS is reporting around that, if not lower.
Yeah, that's a good estimation to make, around that, if not lower. And this is something I think we had talked about prior to this, was if smoking had gone anywhere but down, I feel like that's the data that they would have led with.
I agree.
Smoking's up. Just for that shock value.
Because they would have, exactly. They would have said like, oh, vaping's down, but smoking's up. Look at the gateway, right? Like they would have said something like that. So I have to assume that it's down. I mean, I could 100% be wrong. I'm assuming that they're smart at marketing, right? They have been sort of thus far. So assuming that they're smart at marketing, that would be the direction that, if I were an evil tobacco control person, that's what I would do. So I would put it out first and then look, oh, gateway, they're vaping less, but smoking more. Look, we were right.
Gateway. Stanton Glantz was right. Stanton Glantz was right. Yeah,
exactly.
But they even
he
still
touched all those ladies, but
well, he definitely did.
But he was right about the gateway.
They include, where was I reading this? This was on the FDA site. See, this data is in multiple different places, and depending on where you go, you get a slightly little bit different version of it.
Exactly. That's why I go straight for the downloadable PDF that just has everything they've put out.
Yeah, I don't go for that. I need someone to summarize it for me. Just summarize it for me. But in one of these, they still mention the gateway theory. They still mention the gateway effect, saying, well, even though vaping's down, it's still really high, and it can lead to other addictions and can lead to this, that, and the other.
Right. They do that. And the thing that this is how they spun it, right? Because they're evil marketing people. Yeah. They were like, oh, overall vaping is down, but use of pod devices increased, right?
Yeah.
Because they also gave us data about the popularity of the type of device that these kids are using, and also flavors, popularity of different flavor categories. Yeah, the
flavors.
So they use that to try to like make it sound scary, right? So they're
hysterical.
Like, well, it's true that youth vaping has decreased. Popularity of pod devices has increased by 500%. Right. You know, like whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they do.
Yeah, these insane numbers, and you even get into some questionable percentages, because when they talk about flavors, they're talking about percentages of percentages. So you can see, correct. Oh well, fruit up 66%, like 66% of kids are using fruit vapes. But really, it's not 66% of kids are using fruity vapes.
No, because when you talk about a percent of increase, that's not a percent. Math is so hard, you guys. Okay.
It is for me.
So, right. So if you have like something is 5%, and then the next year something is 10%, that there's a percent increase there, but it's not 5, right? It's not just, 5 plus 5. When you talk about a percent of increase, 5 to 10, I think would be a 100% increase, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody who's math oriented. But so there's even weirder percents of percents when you're talking about a percent growth. That's a completely different percent. It doesn't relate to a number of children. You know what I mean? Math is confusing.
I have even less confidence in my math ability after that last statement. Everything I know is wrong. Everything I know is wrong.
Because if they're talking about, the percent of increase, mm-hmm. that's just an entirely different thing. Like like I said, I think if you go from 5 to, somebody in chat hopefully can math also. If you go from 5% to 10%, I believe that's considered, you're double, right? That's considered a 100% increase, right? So when you talk about like a 300% increase, typically that means like the number has tripled, let's say, for example, or something. It sounds scarier than it can actually be when you look at the actual numbers.
Yes. But they do that with fruit, or they do that with flavors. Among current users of flavored pre-filled pods or cartridges, the most commonly used flavor, 66% reported fruit.
Right. But that's 66% of that 19.6%. That's what you have to remember.
And it gets even lower. This is the part that surprised me, was that mint and menthol, which was, a year ago, 6 months ago, everyone thought all the youth were using mint and menthol. It turns out that those are the least popular flavor types.
Yeah, what did they, I'm trying to look at it too. So fruit is at 73.1% of those who currently vaped.
Right.
I think mint was in second place at 55.8%. Menthol, which I wouldn't expect any kid to be able to differentiate between mint and menthol personally.
Mint and menthol is basically the same thing. Yeah.
Right. So menthol at 37%, and candied desserts or other, next page, sweets at 36.4%. Again, those are percents of percents, right? So your totals are actually significantly smaller than that, because you're talking about 36 or 70% of 19.6%.
Which, that just hurts my brain to even think about that.
So if it's easier, I mean, they do, honestly.
Yeah.
If it's easier to think about it, if you want the raw number breakdown, the current vaping is essentially 3 million kids, is what you're talking about. So if you look at those flavor percentages, when it says 36% like sweets, it's 36% of 3 million. Not of the 15 million, high school students that exist in the United States, but of those 3 million who reported current vaping. I know. I'm sorry. I hope that I'm like doing a good job of explaining it, because
No,
math is lame and boring.
you are, and I'm thankful that you've done the math. There, there's a great subreddit called "Someone Did the Math," and I go to it all. It's fantastic, and you're my someone did the math. Someone did the math. They say, consistent with 2019, pre-filled pods or cartridges were the most commonly used device type in 2020. In 2020, however, during the 2019-2020, disposable e-cigarette use increased approximately 1,000%.
Exactly.
But that 1,000%
right,
number is kind of hogwash, right?
It is, because it's a percent of increase. So it's and here's the crappy part. In last year, in 2019, they didn't put out the breakdown of the type of mods, so I can't tell you what that is, because they release different information every year. Okay. It's so annoying. So annoying. They didn't give us this data last year, so I don't know what last year's was.
They didn't. So I noticed that this year, I thought it was different that they said, okay, pre-filled disposables. They even include tanks and mod systems. Right. What they call mod systems.
Put that. Yeah. Now they may have asked, because here's the other tricky thing about the NYTS. Mm-hmm. They ask a lot more questions than they necessarily publish the data for in the press releases and the stuff that you and I see. So they may have been asking about device types for the past few years, but it's in the raw data and they've never reported it until this year. And that's the really annoying part. Now, you could probably...
Can you download last year's data in the big data file, send it to Brad?
Right. Brad, can you spend a month breaking this down?
We're just curious.
Actually, we may be able to reverse engineer that, though, because if we have the percent of increase and we have the final percent and we have this year's percent, we might be able to extrapolate last year's percent. And
so
you know how I do that? I look up percent of increase calculator on Google. Okay.
That's a thing that I have never Googled.
I Google all kinds of math things. I Google all kinds of math things. Oh man. Okay. This would probably take me a hot minute to figure out. Somebody smart could probably figure out, you know what I mean? If this calculator is giving me the wrong value. You need to solve for X, basically.
Yeah. Look, I'm not going to put you on the spot and make you do some hard math right now. It's one of those like sensational numbers. It's up 1,000%, and you kind of go, all right. Well, what? I mean, how much really is it? And I mean, that's just a device. That's just a device preference. That's it's again like the percentage of the percentage of the current users.
Because they even put here, they say, okay, disposable use of the current vapor, so of the 19.6%, it's 26.5, which equates out to 790,000 students. So 790,000 students are using disposables, and that's a 1,000% increase from whatever it was last year. So the previous, I don't know, somebody figure out.
Must have been zero last year, right?
I mean, what is 1,000% less of 790,000? That's what we would need to know, right? It's probably like, I guess. I don't even, something. Michelle is texting me saying okay, Michelle, what is 1,000% decrease of 790,000? Like, I would need to Google calculators for this. I can figure it out eventually, but it's not a fast process.
Yes.
But yeah, so if we're talking about less than 1 million already, like, I get bored if I don't see 1 million number, you know what I mean, in these surveys, because that's not a lot of kids. Okay? No. That's when we're talking about over 15 million in the United States high schoolers. Less than 1 million of something is not anything I would consider an epidemic. It's not anything, might be something you need to look at because, sure.
Alarming. But, it's not alarming. It's not an epidemic. Well, then they even said the same thing about...
Here saying,
what did he say?
Divide by 11, Dire Thing? He said divide by 11. Yeah. Wait, so what I do... 790, 1, 2, 3 divided by 11. Is that numerator. What I do, Dire Thing? That gives me 71,818. Is that right, Dire Thing? I don't know.
Is Dyer thing a math whiz?
I mean, he's a whiz about a lot of stuff, so I feel like by default I trust him on math. So yeah, if you're talking about an increase from 71,000 kids to 790, so I mean that is an increase, and it's probably 1,000%, but you're still not even over 1 million kids. Yeah. So you have to understand math. And the average person watching the news, when they hear it increased by 1,000%,
you just go, holy shit.
They're talking about less than 1 million kids, right?
Yeah. Well, and they said middle school, it increased 400%.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that right? From 3% to 15.2% among middle school current e-cigarette users.
Oh, did they actually give the starting number?
It just says among high school current e-cigarette users, approximately 400%, from 3% to 15.2% among middle school current e-cigarette users.
Oh, they did. Okay, I got to that section. So 1,000% increase is an increase from 2.4 to 26.5. And a 400% increase is from 3 to 15.2, right? So percentages of increase are very different than the actual starting and ending percentages.
Well, I'm glad that's how they report it.
Right.
And that's one of the things that really confused me when I first started looking at this. I think this is the one that you texted me, like 2 weeks ago. And I got down here and it was just confusing. It's like, I don't get this. 1,000%. What does that even mean? And then they have this big chart of fruit, mint, candy, menthol, alcoholic drink, chocolate, some other flavor.
Yep.
In this big chart. And they include pre-filled pods, cartridges, disposables, tanks, mod systems, and don't know. I don't know what it was.
What's don't know?
Don't know. You were vaping some flavor at a don't know.
Yep.
Good thing we're reporting that. And, crafting policy based on that.
Do you know what else I find interesting?
What?
On their page, and they act like this is some kind of, they say, more than 8 out of 10 current youth e-cig users use flavored e-cigs.
Yeah, that.
What is an unflavored e-cig?
All those unflavored puff bars.
I would like to know.
Yeah.
What an unflavored, as a hobbyist vapor, I don't even really know how to find an unflavored e-cig. Is there? I mean, I'm sure it exists. Unflavored e-liquid, unflavored pod systems. Nobody makes, Puff Bar doesn't make that. JUUL doesn't make that. What is? So in my mind, I'm like, okay, are we talking about marijuana? Is that what we're talking about? Are we talking about cannabis? Are we talking about THC? Because what nicotine vaporizer is unflavored? And there have been tons of discussions about how it is impossible to know whether or not cannabis vaping is included in this survey.
Right, because they don't differentiate between cannabis vaping and regular vaping.
The way that they ask the questions, is a little vague. It's kind of up to the interpretation of the kid filling out the, because if you've got like a THC cart, you're vaping. That's vaping.
Sure, yeah. You might have used it once in the last 30 days.
But what is an unflavored e-cig? That's not a thing.
That's not a thing.
That's not a thing that a kid is going to get their hands on.
No, not at all. That's not a thing that you could even... No, that doesn't exist. That's not a thing.
I feel like DIYers would have to make it. Like, does any commercial company sell unflavored whatever? Like, not that I know of.
No, not that I've ever heard of. But I think that's interesting. That's an interesting idea that it could be cannabis use.
Like Bill Godshaw and other people have been talking about it for years. Like, this is not a new phenomenon. You can ask Michelle Minton. Like, there has always been this like very raised eyebrow about how much of these numbers are talking about cannabis vaping, especially if you break it down by a particular state. For example, Colorado.
Sure.
And you look at their numbers being significantly higher than like other states, for example. Marijuana is also legal there. Maybe that's, a certain percentage of those It's not nicotine vaping. It's a different kind of vaping.
Wow. That is really very interesting. Do you think this? Do you think the National Youth Tobacco Survey do they ask about cannabis use in the YRB, Youth Risk Behavioral Surveillance?
Yes, they do. They do an interesting thing in the YRBS. So they outwardly, like upfront, make the same. Well, the NYTS doesn't, but they actually say, like, of these vaping numbers that we're telling you, these may include cannabis. Like they say that. They also measure cannabis separately, but they put it out that the vaping numbers may include cannabis. So they're, I don't know if, I think they're not quite, I don't know if the survey designers like don't bother differentiating, or they don't know the right lingo to say to the kids to differentiate. Right. But the YRBS, they say may include. We can't eliminate the possibility that THC vaporizers are included in this.
I feel like that's something that everybody would want to know. I feel like that's something that they would want to know. I feel like that's something that consumers would want to know, that concerned parents would also desire to know.
Right. Because if I'm a teenager, vaping marijuana is way more fun than vaping nicotine.
Yeah, 100%. 200%.
I mean, so yeah, we've always never been able to know for certain if it's not included in there. That's always been a caveat of these. And of course, they won't say it, that YRBS does, but NYTS doesn't really talk about it.
Right. Wow. That's unbelievable.
They're vaping.
Yeah, it's just vaping. It's just that big blanket term of just vaping.
Like eating.
Yeah, eating up.
Eating
1,000%.
could cause salmonella poisoning. Did you know that eating could cause salmonella poisoning? Oh, you want to know eating what? Well, that's not important.
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
not
eating.
That's
so you should just stop eating.
Yeah. Yeah, just
Could you
just
imagine if that's what the FDA put out when there was like a salmonella outbreak of like romaine lettuce?
Yeah,
they were
seriously.
Like, all salad is contaminated with salmonella. Like, which
all
one
salad.
though?
Nope, just all salad. Avoid all salads.
All of it.
Just avoid all salads. Stop eating. It's the only true way to be safe.
Pretty much.
Is to stop
and that's basically
eating.
What they're doing. I mean, that's essentially what they're doing. Vaping is a verb, right? Like,
right. Vaping is a verb.
It can apply to different substances.
Multiple different substances. Well, and it seems like what's happening is at the end of all of this, even though vaping is, declined, down, however percentage you want to say it, however 2 million people you want to say it, it seems like that doesn't matter. It seems like they're just saying, well, sure, yeah, youth vaping's down a little bit, but nothing's really changing. We're still going to enforce this. We're still going to go after this. This doesn't matter.
There's a however in there. If you read it, it says, in September 2020, FDA and CDC released findings from the 2020 National Youth Tobacco Survey showing that 1.8 million fewer U.S. youth are currently using e-cigarettes compared to last year. Yeah. However, 3.6 million youth are still currently using e-cigarettes. Moreover, we keep going. There's a moreover. The data shows an alarming increase in the number of youth who use disposable e-cigarettes. Right. However, and moreover.
A however and a moreover in the same
paragraph.
In the same paragraph. An alarming, and this is more than moreover and more than however. My least favorite thing that I read in the National Youth Tobacco Survey is that word uptick. I just hate that word. It just bothers me. Yeah. New York. I did it again. National Youth Tobacco Survey data shows an alarming uptick in use of disposable e-cigarettes by youth, specifically in 2020. It doesn't take a rocket surgeon to go, oh, well, if you've banned pods and whatever mint and menthol and mango they were using before, then they're going to get them somewhere. So they're going to go to, like, the vapor in me goes, oh, yeah, of course they switched to disposables. Of course they did.
Yeah.
Right?
It's nearly the same thing.
Yeah, it's nearly the same thing. Well, FDA is going to still send out warning letters. FDA is still going to take swift action. You know, nobody's celebrating lower youth vaping rates. I'm sure when we see low youth smoking rates, no one's going to
find something negative to say about that.
Yeah, they're going to have something negative to say about that. We got a super chat from Ranger Man. Youth vaping is down. Technically, yes, exactly. But so what? So what? That's kind of what they're saying. That's what it feels like they're saying.
Exactly what they're saying.
So what? So what? And is there any like speculation or postulation as to like why? Because this is, I mean, there weren't any.
Down?
Yeah. Why is it down? Flavor bans, tobacco 21. Are youth just, were they just curious and trying it and now they've lost interest?
I think there's potentially a lot of explanations. And there's 3 that I think could be either a combination of or, so I definitely think Ivali probably had an effect.
You think that scared some kids straight?
I do. I think it scared some kids because people were dying. People were getting hospitalized. That was last summer. And this survey was taken January. So that's, you know, not that far. We were still getting like, reports about it at winter of last year, right? Like they were still winding down their investigation and whatnot. So that wasn't that far away. I think Ivali could have played an effect in that. I think that trends, absolutely, like whether it's cool or not, is part of that. Because if you look at the prior survey data for vaping, there have been fluctuations. It's not a straight upward thing. We saw it go down before. Like in 2011, it was really low. And then we saw like a spike. I think it was like in 2014. And then it went down and then it went up. And like this
was down in 2017.
Like, yeah, exactly. So this has happened before. This is not, you know, kids are fickle, right? They do different things depending on, you know, whatever. So I think popularity can wane. Also, there's a certain subsect of teens who, like, once they start seeing it on TV and everybody's doing it, then they're bored of it, right? Like, it's only cool when no one's doing it type thing. That could be part of it.
Wow, yeah.
And then Tobacco 21 could also play a role. I'm not going to say it couldn't, right? Because it is a little harder to necessarily have a friend when you're in high school who's over 21 than it is 18, right? So, I mean, that is possible. I still think kids, you know, I still got alcohol in high school.
I was just going to say,
so,
I still drank MGDs on
the beach in high school. It was a little harder, right?
Yeah,
it was a little trickier. Like, if a senior friend of mine could have gotten it, there probably, you know, it would have been significantly easier, but we still had a hookup. You know what I mean? It was just, you know, I knew one guy instead of like 40. So,
right. Yeah.
You know.
Well, I mean, when I was in high school, we had cigarette vending machines, just vending machines. I could go down to the Mexican restaurant like a block from my house and just pump in 1,000 quarters, you know, while no one's looking, and just grab whatever the first pack of cigarettes I can get is. That's how I got cigarettes.
That I wasn't around for vending machines.
Yeah, vending machines. Remember cigarette vending machines? We even had there was this one, I won't say the name of the bar, but there was a bar down the street from where I lived where the owner just gave no fucks. Anybody could just walk in like, oh, I got to use the bathroom. And he's like, oh, okay. And so you'd go back to the bathroom, but really he'd hear clink, 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 quarters going in. That's where
the machine was?
Yeah, because that's where the machine was. And it's like, oh, yeah, I'm coming in every week, going way out of my way to use your bathroom. All right. He knows what's going on.
So clean.
He doesn't care. We're all buying cigarettes.
He's making money.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, what I'm worried about is if they take away pods and they take away disposables, what are the youths going to go to next?
I mean, that's an interesting
question. More cannabis products?
It's like, potentially. I mean, we already think they're using them. So, you know, what if you take away all the devices and the numbers don't go down? Like, that's a pretty good indication that they were never using, you know, our vapor products as opposed to, you know, cannabis ones. That is a possibility. As a teenager, I just can't imagine that there's going to be a lot of like DIY interest from teenagers.
No.
That's just too many things that you have to order from too many places and too much measuring. Like, I can't imagine that I don't know what they're gonna do, to be honest with you. I'm interested to see like next year's data, for example.
Yeah. Well, that'll be really interesting because this is going to be done during the quarantine COVID times.
Right.
It's going to mess everything up. It's going to mess the numbers all up.
I mean, potentially. And that's if they can still even do it. I mean, they did in 2019, I believe it was, they switched the NYTS to a digital survey. It used to be pen and paper, like, Scantron style or something. But in 2019, they digitalized it. And so they gave it to kids on like iPads, basically, or tablets. So in theory, if they work with schools, they could potentially still administer that, via online or something. I don't know if they've, got the technology to do that for next year, assuming, most schools are still, at home learning or whatever it is that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we'll have to see what's going on with schools next year to know if they're gonna, because they always do it in like the early part of the year, right? So it's, this year was January to March for this year. So next year it might be January to March. Sometimes it's like, March, April, somewhere in there. It's always like early, in spring. So I don't know what they're going to do for next year. They squeaked it in under the wire this year.
Yeah, just barely. Just barely squeaked it in. But
because lockdown started like mid-March, and that's when they finished the survey.
Yeah. Wow. They really squeaked it in. Really squeaked it in. Wow. That was like incredible timing.
Did you know something?
Yeah. Where's the tinfoil hat?
I think that's too much tinfoil hat.
Where's the, that is a little bit,
it's a little too much
tinfoil hat there. Had a super chat from Luke. Luke, very gracious of you. Thank you. Yo, anyone feel like telling the Aussie government this? Look, Australia is a whole other machine. Nicotine's been illegal in Australia for a few years now. It's only an illicit market there. Everybody, if you vape in Australia, you have to import your nicotine illegally. And they've still, and that's the great thing is, if vaping has still managed to succeed in that climate, smokers are still quitting with vaping, even though it's completely illegal there. I think that speaks volumes to how effective this technology really is. Had one more from Chris, just a lemon head man standing on a chair being a superhero. I appreciate that. Chris Holler, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate that. So yeah, youth vaping's down. That's it. And if you're good at math, then you can figure this out. And if you're not, then that's why we have Danielle Jones to disseminate percentages of percentages and percentage increases that aren't what they seem. 1,000%
No, they
increase.
are. Yeah, 1,000% increase. I mean, factually correct. It just sounds crazy.
It just sounds crazy. When can we expect the next set of data? I know you said at the beginning, I don't quite remember. When can we expect the next set of data?
So usually it's around October, typically.
Okay.
The first one usually is like August. So I think the big epidemic one was August. It's like August, September, and then it's usually like October is typically when they do the larger dump. So I would think, all things being, assuming things have gone like previous years, which who knows, but I would imagine we would get smoking data like next month-ish. I would hope, I would think.
That's exciting to me. I can't wait.
Oh, I know. I want to see it too, but
wait.
I'm so perplexed as to why they didn't release it in their preliminary. Like, it's just so weird.
Yeah.
It's
really so bizarre weird. Well, it feels like it's just one of those things that even like Truth Initiative and Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, and now we have PAVE, it seems like everybody just forgot about smoking. Like, everybody just forgot about combustion and all of the horrible things that go along with combusting your tobacco. And I feel like FDA and CDC are just, they're knowing their audience. Oh, they want the vape data. Let's just give them the vape data first. And we've just forgotten how bad smoking is.
Yeah. or because it's so low, they're just like, well, that's not really, we don't, vaping came at such an opportune time for them, like such an opportune time, because smoking rates were already declining. I mean, that's true. From my understanding, the decline became way steeper after vaping came out, which I think is not a coincidence.
No.
But it was already, if we're being honest, it was already on the decline.
Yes.
And that could be a variety of different factors. Tobacco control people would tell you that it's our great ads, and it's our taxes, and it's our et cetera. And
must be.
I mean, it could have been some of those things. Like, these things are a little, I'm sure some of that had an effect on some people. Mm-hmm. But the steep declines were definitely, like I had a graph, a year or so ago, if you remember, that was like this big graph, and it showed like the projected decline, based on previous years, and then what the actual decline was post vaping entering the market. And it was a much steeper, situation than what they had initially projected.
Yeah.
I think those two things are related, but that's a theory. But yeah, I don't know if it's just so low that they're like, we're not going to get any funding crying about 5% of kids smoking or something, you know what I mean? Like, so we're just not going to focus on that or talk about that because whatever. Like, did you see, oh God, I got so mad at Truth last night on Twitter.
No.
They're pushing this whole like, let me look. More like shows and movies are showing tobacco product usage, and that's leading kids to vape. And I'm okay. Stranger Things showing a lot of people smoking is driving. It's what their terminology. Driving youth vaping, but youth vaping decreased this year.
Yeah.
How's that?
There's some questionable. Yeah. Yep.
How's that working? What?
That drove me insane. In fact, I retweeted it, and because it reminded me of when I was young and the very first Superman, or Superman 2 with Christopher Reeve, Superman 2 came out, and there's a scene where Superman is fighting the bad guys, fighting General Zod, and General Zod throws Superman into a big Marlboro truck, and people went fucking bananas that there was a Marlboro truck in a movie meant for kids, and it's just going to encourage kids to smoke, and just a truck. It's just the logo, the Marlboro logo, and it's the same like moral high grounder argument. And I think it's I don't know how they come to this conclusion. Do they think that a kid sees a Marlboro truck and is going to smoke cigarettes? Do they think that if they see someone smoking in Stranger Things, that a kid's going to go, I'm going to vape now? They can't really think that.
How are you going across products? Like seeing someone smoke, so you decide to vape?
Yeah.
Like something that needs fire. Let me pick up a battery rechargeable device, because those things are related.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's like panicky parent stuff. It's like in the 50s when they, if you listen to rock and roll, you're going to go to hell. It's just the same argument, I feel like it's just the same thing over and over again.
And I think they keep getting, like, they have to scrape the bottom of the barrel, right? Because as lower as the rates go, like they don't have they need a crisis all the time, because that's how they get funding, right?
Yeah, they need a dragon to slay.
Exactly. So they're scraping the bottom of the barrel, like, ooh, shows showing smoking.
Yeah, that's got to be it.
That's doing it.
That's doing it.
Not even mentioning that they show the most people vaping, especially kids, with their stupid television ads.
Yeah, constantly, like, everywhere, and posters in schools.
No, did you see the little like trailer that they put out? So this thing about tobacco use in the media is a whole report. Yeah, it was a whole report that they did, right? But they made a video for it's like they made a trailer basically for the report, and in the thing all they did was show every clip of these characters that they're talking about smoking all in one place. So you're saying that showing this is increasing it, and then you show all of it
nothing
in one
but
clip. I literally called them out on Twitter. I was so pissed. I was like, so you've just authored a report saying that showing this is bad, and then you show it.
Wow. Where the mental gymnastics you have to jump through to feel like you're actually doing good by doing that, that is insane.
It is.
Who funds the Truth Initiative? We need to defund the Truth Initiative. Who funds them? Is this a Robert Wood Johnson Foundation thing?
I don't think so. Truth Initiative, and a lot of people get this a little mixed up. It was initially funded, and when I mean initially, like the first 2 years, it was founded and funded with MSA funds. That is true.
Right.
But that was at the very beginning. That's how it was started. It no longer receives MSA funds. I heard somewhere that they basically that they're like really good at investing their money, essentially. So that they've gotten more funding off of like the stock market, essentially, or something.
Oh, they just fund themselves.
I think, yeah, I don't recall them being a part of the Robert Wood Johnson fund situation, but now I can't watch. It's probably in my video and I just can't remember.
That's okay. There's just so much information out there. I can't remember half of it.
No, they had been for a brief by MSA funds, and a lot of people get that wrong because they're like, "You're not anymore, you guys, not anymore.
No, not anymore.
Don't run around saying that because you're actually wrong."
And this isn't something that's easily Googleable either.
I'm gonna pull up my
Who funds the Truth Initiative?
Crazy graph from my video and see if because my brain can't always remember all these things.
And the irony of them calling themselves the Truth Initiative is not lost on me.
Right. So I think that they do, let's see. I know that they have a relationship with Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. I don't know if there's a finance relationship there, but see, I have them connect. I think they may get some funding from NIH, potentially from Tobacco-Free Kids, and potentially directly from HHS, if I'm not mistaken. That may,
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah, I had it all laid out once upon a time. I looked like a crazy conspiracy person. I had
just strings
notebooks with strings and circles and lines, so you couldn't even tell what was connected to what anymore. It was pretty crazy. Michelle Minton actually, I think, has a really good chart that she made of all the different relationships between everybody.
I'd be really interested to see that.
Yeah, she posted it on Twitter a while ago. I can't remember if
I'd be really interested to see that.
This is it actually.
Hang on, we had a super chat from Ranger Man. Oh no, go ahead. This is more important.
So they get funding from NIH, which is the National Institute of Health, and HHS, which is Health and Human Services. So government-ish.
Yeah, so that's a government-funded anti-tobacco program. How is that allowed? How's that a thing? And how do they not say that disclaimer, the Truth Initiative is funded by your tax dollars? I
mean, when you get these degrees of separation, I feel like the government is that doesn't really matter anymore. You don't really need to know. It was initially your money, but it's passed through so many hands that it's basically it's not even your money anymore.
It's it's not even your money anymore, even though it really definitely still is your money. Yeah. Wow. Truth Initiative. Do you know about that, Ranger Man? Ranger Man says, I had a coworker ask how to quit smoking, and I'm like, you're looking at it every time you see me vape. Too bad he bought the popcorn lung BS. Well, I mean, that's unfortunate. That's something that still gets brought up to this very day. Dan Baker, very gracious of you. Quick thought. One, Grimm in the White House and send all of our troubles go away. Sure. Danielle, the First Lady, maybe? Well, see, we would have to be married for that to happen. And Danielle Jones is already happily married, as am I happily married. So if either of us get to be president, which we can be vice president. I can be the vice president.
I would be the VP. Yeah, exactly. We don't need to be first
lady. Yeah, we can be the president and vice president. I've seriously considered Los Angeles City Council. Have you ever thought about running for political office? Yeah, I've been thinking about it.
I've heard there have been
City
a few
council.
people in vaping who've decided to run. Actually, you wouldn't be the first.
Yeah.
Or the only.
Yeah. I feel like a tattooed politician was inevitable. Like, why not me? Right?
I mean, come on.
Progressive.
I mean, we've got somebody running who's named Spike. I mean,
yeah.
the door is open. You know what I'm saying?
Spike. Oh, Spike.
I do not mean to make fun of the libertarians at all, but that name, like,
it's
I only
ridiculous.
think of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I'm just like Vice President Spike. Like,
yeah.
what?
I just try to pretend. I'm not even a really big fan of Spike. I really do like Joe Jorgensen, and in order for me to vote for Joe Jorgensen, I have to kind of pretend that Spike doesn't exist. I just ignore him. I go, no, it's just Joe Jorgensen, and she's got no VP pick.
By herself.
Yeah, just by herself. She's going to do both. She's going to be the president and the vice president. She can do it. Got to ignore Spike. Well, what are you going to do? It drives me nuts.
What parent names their kid Spike? I want to meet
that
parent.
I know. And it's
like Buffy the Vampire Slayer is the only character I've ever heard of called Spike. I mean,
Spike.
He was great. Don't get me wrong, but
I never watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I know. I'm supposed to. A lot of people have told me I should. I've just never watched it.
I mean, you like Joss Whedon, right?
Yeah, I like Joss Whedon.
Yeah.
Well, and I like,
Buffy.
horror, sci-fi, stuff like that. You know, I feel like I'd be into it. It's just one of those shows. It's like I have to save it for my retirement. It's like when I retire someday, I'll watch Game of Thrones. You know, I'll watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I'll watch the shows that I never got to watch. All of Battlestar Galactica.
I actually have watched that.
I
actually have. I remember when we were watching one of the season finales of Game of Thrones, and you were in the room with us.
Yeah.
But you had
ACC.
zero interest in it, and we're all like on the edge of our seats, like, oh my god, you're over here like cracking jokes about, and we're like throwing popcorn at you, like,
yeah.
What's happening?
It was just really intense, people talking at each other. And then this lady brings out this other guy, and all of you guys in the room were just like, oh.
Yeah.
What?
And Nick's just like,
was that a big deal?
Your boobs.
Was that a big deal? Was that a big deal? Okay. I don't know. Oh. Well, shit. I guess we're winding down to the end here of this here Tuesday Bro Tuesday. Had a couple more super chats. Dan Baker, that's very gracious of you. A mother that plays volleyball for a living definitely names their children and all pets Spike. Hashtag juice my way. I see what you did there. Dan. Got one more here from Trey. Danielle, marry me, please? No? Okay. Nick? No. That's going to be a no from me, dog. I'm so thankful for the both of you and the hard work you do. It's definitely inspiring. Well, thank you very much. I mean, I can't speak for Danielle, but I'll say that just trying to do the best I can. You know, it's a rough climate out there, trying to disseminate this information, trying to fight against weird percentages and half-truths and targeted messaging and, you know, the mainstream media. It's just very difficult. We're trying to do our best. I get burnt out. I'm sure Danielle gets burnt out, you know, but yeah. Like,
when you don't see me on Twitter for like a week, it's because I'm like, I need a break.
I don't even want to open Twitter. But I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this Tuesday Bro Tuesday up. But shit, youth vaping is down. And that's a thing that's a good thing. When more information comes out, 3 cheers. When more information comes out from the National Youth Tobacco Survey, I'm sure we'll report it here as quickly as we can on Tuesday Bro Tuesday. Ohmed. Lord of the Rings is greater than Star Wars? Well, not in my neighborhood. I'm just kidding. If you think that, you can think that. You're wrong. I'm just kidding. You can think that. I don't care. I'm not going to gatekeep. Look, enjoying things shouldn't be a stressful activity. I hate gatekeeping. My brother is a huge Lord of the Rings fan, maybe bigger Lord of the Rings fan than I am a Star Wars fan, and that's fine. I like Lord of the Rings. Look, I don't hate Lord of the Rings. I think Star Wars is... I don't know. Star Wars is my jam. Star Wars is my jammed. But one more time, we're gonna wrap this Tuesday Bro Tuesday up. Danielle Jones, thank you. Thank you for coming on, doing some math, talking about youth vaping and this weird messaging. I'll have some links down in the description, including where you can see the Global Tobacco and Nicotine Forum, including the active CASAA call to action to save vape mail, including the link to the Veritas cohort study, amongst other things from CDC, the weekly morbidity and mortality weekly report. Doesn't that sound just delightful? I'll have links. Mouthful. It is a mouthful. It's too much. They got to rename that the MMWR. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But yeah, one more time. Thank you, Danielle. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to go ahead and end this. Hang on this on the Zoom call real quick. I'm going to take us out. But freaking, oh, wait, the intro's already gone. Nope. One more time, you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. One more thank you to Danielle Jones. I'll have links down in the description. I'll catch you back here Thursday. That's right. It's vlog day, and I'm already planning the vlog right now. I think we're going to have a big old retro vaping segment. So anyway, like I said, guys, thank you so much for being here. Be excellent to each other. Peace.